And we are live, I think, maybe. Hopefully this is working. Hello, welcome welcome to the first episode of Down Back to Block cast. And we have Joe. And he, well, you know what, you can just fucking tell people who you are.
Okay, well, great intro. Yeah, I mean, so I'm the CEO of iBallistic. We're an indie game studio, and I guess our claim to fame is that we've tried unsuccessfully to pitch Mortal Kombat in HD to Ed Boon at least 2 times, in 2016 and 2018, and we're, third time's a charm. So we're trying to do it again with the Mortal Kombat Trilogy Remake project.
Yeah. And so I will have links in the description. I did a video already on this channel covering that, but I'll put more links in there as well as the petition. That petition's gone up fast, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
that's crazy.
Honestly, the first 2 months, because we started it in October, and I remember this guy Minzy on Twitter. Basically, I was producing artwork for my company. We're looking at new game development engines all the time. So right now, the game we're currently working on, which I can't really talk about, is being created on Unity. And for one reason or another, we're just looking at other game development engines. And so we started looking at Unreal Engine 5 to see how that would fare, because it had just released, and it's still, I think, in beta anyway. But the graphics are incredible. Like, if you see what it can do, it's got this really intense lighting system that's super realistic and just incredible. And without kind of geeking out on that too hard, what I would do in my spare time, as we were kind of finishing off the game that we're working on now, I just was like, well, I love Mortal Kombat, and I want to just see how this engine holds up if I start producing content for like an HD-ified version of, really at the time I was thinking Mortal Kombat 2. I think the first stages I did were all Mortal Kombat 2 stages. And then I started posting some of this stuff on Twitter, and it's like, I'm such a noob on social media, especially like Twitter. Like, I have no followers, so like, please follow me. Like, I'll give you my my tag on Twitter, if that's what they call it. Is they call it?
I'll send you my nudes. Just follow me. I'll send you my nudes, man.
You should come check out my MySpace or Friendster account. That's about the level of knowledge I have in social media, and yeah, so I basically started posting stuff up there, and I was like, people were responding to it, and this one guy was like, we need to do a petition for this, and we need to do this, and he's like, hey, wait a second, what game do you want to petition for? And I was like, I had to think about that for a second. I was like, I wasn't really thinking about that at all. This was just like a test bed for fun.
Yep.
And he was like, well, we should pick something that, can really resonate with everybody. And we landed on Mortal Kombat Trilogy, because it's got all those characters. And I think it had just been like that October, I'm not sure what the date exactly, maybe October 11th. was the actual 25-year anniversary of Trilogy. So I was like, this is perfect timing. Like we should like announce that that's what we're gonna do. And so just the stars kind of aligned in that favor. A lot of people ask me like, oh, why don't you do Mortal Kombat 2 and all that stuff? And I think the reason is because I've pitched this 2 other times to Ed and company. I know that they're not like super into the older games. They don't see, well, we can get into that later, but they don't see those games as being like tournament games that people play in tournaments, whereas like Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 is a tournament game, and yeah, so all that good stuff.
Listen, man, like, I don't know, like, how do I put this delicately? I don't give a fuck about balance, right, when it comes to a fighting game, because I think at the end of the day, there's always going to be an exploit. Somebody is going to figure something out, and they're just going to find that way in to, you know, to exploit the situation. If you're constantly like fine tuning and whatnot, you're going to end up with a very stale game. So I'm not the biggest fan of recent Mortal Kombats. I loved MK9 or 2011 as it's called, essentially that sort of like nice sidestep reboot with the story too, which was great. But it seems that it feels like they're chasing like the esports crown, and ironically, you know, with MK11, it's probably the most like you know, esports sort of, you know, made ready version of MK. However, it didn't get added into esport. Like it didn't even get into Evo or something like that. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think one of the things, and I could be wrong, I'd love to know, because, you know, A, you're a developer, and B, you love MK as much as I do. One of the major problems with, especially when they went from 2D to 3D era with MK games, is that they changed too much with each version that came out. It felt like you had to, almost to a degree, relearn each version that came out. Even sort of like MK4 was probably, even though it's not my favorite, it's probably the last, even though it was 3D, but it's last of the 2D era where it still kept a semblance of, this is how you do an uppercut, this is how you do a sweep, this is how you do a roundhouse, this is how you do combos, right? When they moved into the 3D era, right, they started following the Tekken path with their combos and stuff. So then MK fans are like, oh, okay, now we've got to learn this. You know, and the Deception came out, and then they started rolling back to more classic things like, oh, we've added the uppercut. And then they, in Armageddon, I think they added in the sweep. You know, because they realized that people didn't want a Tekken Mortal Kombat. They wanted Mortal Kombat, right? Yeah. The Japanese developers with their fighting games seem to keep the core of their game and just add bits. Even a little bit, maybe a lot, but the core essence is that. So if you pick up Tekken 1, or who's my favorite? I usually use Hwang in Tekken, like the Taekwondo guy, right? I love him because I used to teach Taekwondo. And so I love, like, you could pick up that character in an old game and pick him up in, say, Tekken 7, and apart from some different combos, maybe some changes to throws, you're going to know how to play Tekken, right? Mortal Kombat's different, right? You go from Mortal Kombat 10 to Mortal Kombat 11, and it feels like your game suddenly went into the nursing home, and now the combo system's changed. They've changed how, like, like the sort of like the meters that build up in regards to like doing your supers. They changed how the X-rays work. They changed how, like, you know, how to you know, because in MK9 you had to press block and an attack to make it do the enhanced version. Now you don't have to do that. It just seems like they're focusing so much on keeping it fresh every time they bring it out that it can almost alienate. Whereas a Street Fighter fan knows how to play Street Fighter, Tekken fan knows how to play Tekken, a King of Fighters fighter knows how to play it. Hell, even Samurai Showdown 2019, you could pick it up and play Samurai Showdown. People go, oh, it feels slow. This is how Samurai Showdown used to feel, right? This is exactly how it used to feel. So from your perspective, right, do you find that jarring too? Is that why you're not the biggest fan of the newer ones? Or
I think that's I'm trying to think of like where they lost me after Mortal Kombat 4. I played 4 a lot in the arcades. I used to work in an arcade. I used to repair the games, so
Oh
I
yeah, nice,
remember
sweet.
I had an affinity for like that game in particular because I had so much time
Did you
to spend on it.
did your cabinet have the curtain around it for the
No,
end
no,
for the?
no, no,
We had
no
that in
curtain.
Australia, man. How
What
fucking
was that
pussified
about?
are we? We had
I
to
don't
have a
understand.
curtain. We had to have a curtain around the MK4 thing. So in order to go play MK4, you had to duck in under, right?
Because it
And
was too
play.
violent. What was the reason? They didn't want
I
people to
think
see.
because it was violent, right? Like it's so weird, and because it was
That's
3D,
crazy.
somehow it's so weird, isn't it? Because MK4 looks far less like
Yeah,
realistic
less
than a
realistic. I
digitized
mean,
game.
yeah,
So we had to
totally.
have a little fucking, snowflake curtain around the
That's crazy.
fucking.
That's crazy. Now, what about the other arcade games though? Like, what about like MK
um,
1 through 3?
no,
I mean,
no, never did.
that's crazy. So maybe they built that particular cabinet to support like a curtain to be put around it. That's
Yeah, it was weird, man.
that's
It's like,
crazy. Yeah, I mean to answer your question, I think the they lost me when it stopped being 2D. I think they lost their identity. After MK4, they really kind of lost their identity. They tried a lot of new things. They tried to take a bunch of things off of other things, and I don't think. I mean, you can talk to MK fans. They'll be like, "No, those were the best games. They were really cool. They tried new things. You had different fighting styles." Hey, all right, we're back.
we are back. Did it? How did Maybe is my camera off? Hang on, let me check. Keep going.
Yeah,
That's all right. It's all right. So keep talking. Yep. So you were talking about how they lost you after MK4.
yeah. So they lost me after MK4 basically because they lost their identity, and to me that was pretty clear.
Yep.
It was obvious to me that like the games that came out after that really didn't. They tried to be something that they weren't, and
Yep.
I didn't agree with the direction of it. I don't think a lot of MK fans did, and we as developers study this period of time from like 2001 through like 2006, I guess it was, where there was a period of time. It's like the dark ages for fighting games because, and in particular, you watch Mortal Kombat go from like this leader of the pack right
Yep.
up there with Street Fighter to just it was a shell of itself during that period of time. So
Yep.
clearly a lot of fans were lost and a lot of people didn't agree with the direction that they went. And I think we were talking about this before the stream, but it's probably not it's probably not just a coincidence that it happened to be around the time when Tobias had left the studio and he was kind of doing his own thing. So they really, although I know he guided the art style and he sort of came up with characters, I feel like he was sort of part of Mortal Kombat's soul. And with that missing, it took a really long time for really MK9 to come around, which I agree with you 100%. Like MK9 came back and kind of reclaimed what Mortal Kombat could be, and then they've been building off of it since then. But yeah, like totally, what you said about the new ones too. I totally agree. I think MKX was really really cool in terms of what they did with the combo system, and then they took all that and they slowed it down quite a bit for MK11. And a lot of people didn't like how the gameplay pacing just completely. I think you said it's like MK got put in a nursing home. I thought that was pretty. I think that's a really great description of it. I love the characters, and I love like they have RoboCop and all these like crazy characters and like Rambo and all that. Like that's really cool. Spawn and I mean Joker, all that stuff is cool, but yeah, I think that I don't know if that's like enough to make up for the gameplay that was lost. Like I think they really kind of perfected it in MKX. At least that's one of my favorites.
Yep.
Out of the new ones, I like 9, of course, because that was like the return to the return from the grave, if you will. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, I think you're dead on. Like that period of time, they lost their identity, and I think that the newer games are constantly trying to do too much differently, and it does alienate the player base and make it so that people are like, oh man, like I've got to relearn all this stuff. And like you said, like you play Street Fighter, like you know how to play Ken, you know how to play Ryu. You're gonna be able to play that game relatively the same throughout all the series. Maybe Third Strike is a little bit different, but yeah, I mean. I can talk gameplay mechanics with you for probably the whole rest of the show if we wanted to. But yeah, like
Oh, I don't care,
totally,
man. It's all good. Yeah.
yeah, no, I think that you're dead on with that. And I would love to see the new Mortal Kombat 12 when it comes out really kind of take MK11's combo system and everything and just speed it up to the speed of MKX. And I love the crushing blows, and I love some of the cool stuff that you can do in it. That are like super. They need to cut down on those cinematics though, like the crushing. I don't know if it's the crushing blows or the I'm trying to remember what the other ones are called. The ones that are super cinematic, where like the camera zooms in slow motion. It's just too much. Like it's awesome in the beginning, but then it's like it's a good 2 to 3 seconds too long after you've seen it, and it suffers the same fate as fatalities, right? Like fatalities are awesome, and then after you've seen them like the 1000th time, you're just like, okay, like let's just skip it. And you'll note that like people online when they're playing with each other, they just don't do fatalities to each other. It's like a fate worse than death, right? Like oh, don't make me watch this movie that I can't interact with like for the 1000th time that I've seen. So yeah. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that.
No, I agree. I don't know if I get my webcam back, so for my viewers, you're just going to have to miss out on my sexy face. You're going to have to look at Joe for the rest. I don't care. Anyway, so no, I agree. See, I actually hate the combo system in MK11 because I don't like being able to do combos that aren't touching the person. So, for example, if we go back to MK Trilogy Ultimate and MK3, when they introduced the run meter was great because what that did is it allowed you to, your combo or the length of what you could do was limited, right? You didn't listen, man. I've been juggled in the corner for like half a year in MK11, and I just get the shits, man. Sometimes I just put the controller down because they're sitting there just holding me in the air, going low punch, tap. It's just broken. They need to scale it back to simplicity, right? There's it's weird. They think they're having all these technical things. Oh, we changed the wake up attacks from using a special move to this specific wake up attack to where you press up and like X or Y for an Xbox controller, and it's like, and then they have their own defensive bar that can be used. It's just so complex. Whereas in the classic MK games, you'll know this. If you're in a corner, like if you're in the corner, the computer will actually get pushed back out. Right. So that is creating sort of that fair balance. There's none of that in the new ones, right? You can start a fucking combo anywhere on the stage, and you don't even have to be touching the person. Whereas in classic MK, you had to touch them, even if they're blocking, right? That's the only time that you can start those combos. The dialer combo ones, right?
Yep.
They need to bring that back, right? Yeah, you can have breakers in there, have combo breakers. That's fine. But scale it back and have a ceiling that, like an MK4, maximum damage. There's only so far that you can go, because otherwise it just gets ridiculous. And then Mortal Kombat goes from, and this again, which is why I love John Tobias's influence. It went from this mystical Asian martial art, exotic feel to this, and all this, what's this character's special move going to be like? To this like, oh, who's the most broken we can use online, right? Like who can we use right now to get the most amount of wins before they patch it, and then we'll just choose the next one, right? Yeah. It's gone from a focus on the mysticism and this, sort of really, and I love like Asian storytelling anyway. So it's, that's what really drove me to it as well. Apart from the fact it had fucking ninjas. Like if it's got a ninja in it, if there's a ninja in it, man, I'll play it, right? But you know, so having ninjas in it, and then the Asian storytelling of the secret tournament. Again, I don't agree with guns in Mortal Kombat at all.
Yeah.
Like, you know, a bullet is faster than a projectile, and I just don't like it. It's strayed away from its original conception. And I understand storytelling and all that sort of horse shit, but I think one of the things that made the Mortal Kombat name itself is the tournament that does decide the fate of the realm, right?
Yeah.
So now it's not that anymore. There is no tournament. The last time there was a tournament was MK9, right? When it kind of sidestepped, you know, Raiden went back, changed the timeline, and then we got basically 2 separate timelines, but in a tournament setting. But it was still bound to those rules of Mortal Kombat. But now it's not, you know, and then they do like different retcons and, you know, implement certain sort of political ideology and stuff like that into it. And it's like, what are you doing? You know, like, just, you know, you need to scale it back, I believe, to simplicity. You just bring it, scale it right back. People will figure it out. People aren't going to care if you can't do billion hit combos, right? Don't make me choose my fucking special moves. I want Cabal. I want to have all these special moves. I don't want to sit there and go, well, if I take this one, I can't take that one. If I take that one, I can't use this one. Or if I use this one, then I'm, you know, like, I don't need my fighting game to be a fucking RPG. I need it to be a fighting game. Nice and simple and brutal. And I used to be in some tournaments in Ultimate MK3 in the arcade, you know, and that's intense. But we didn't have no 3-minute, like, X-ray or a 5-minute fatality. You know, you mentioned the fatalities before in the X-rays and stuff. In MK9, they were quick. They were brutal. They were quick. They're like, bang, you know, like, that's it. Fucking, you know, you take that smash, right? And the fatalities were nice and quick too. The cinematic style, I hate it.
Yeah.
100%, because it's not fast.
It's taking too much control away from the player, right? And I think that's a mistake from the get-go. Yeah. So,
okay, so with Trilogy, your Trilogy Remake one, and I'm assuming now that I think about it, you had a screenshot that showed Liu Kang in his MK1 outfit. I think it might have been against, was it Baraka on the Pit 3 thing, whatnot. So in my video, I'm like, oh, do we get extra costumes? But now I realize it was probably from MK1. But with your one, are we getting classic character looks, or the classic characters that they introduced on the PlayStation 1 version, where you could have, what was it, Kano, Kung Lao, Jax, and Raiden? Is that something you want to do, or prefer not to?
Yeah, I think we want to do all of that. There's me and my team as the developer, and then there's me as a fan.
Yep.
So the fan me wants to put like everything in the entire game. Like, I want to have the Nintendo 64 version of Chameleon with a K. I want to have the Chameleon with a C. I want to have the Stargate from Nintendo 64. I want to have, like, all of that stuff needs to be in it for it to be complete. And one of the things that just really bugged me and really resonated with me when I think I saw it in your video this morning was the fact that they didn't have a majority of the Mortal Kombat 1 stages in Trilogy. And that bugged me for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons that it bugged me may not be the same reason that it bugged you, but I'm a huge fan of Dan Forden's soundtracks and music, and so if you can't get those stages, then you can't hear those songs, those soundtracks. And to me, it was like unforgivable to not have. I believe the throne room from MK1 is not in. Yeah, I don't believe that's in there. The courtyard, I don't believe is in there. So there's just a lot. The courtyard is the one with the I think it's the one with the big Buddha statue in the background, right? How do you not have that in there? Like, that's iconic. And so, my perspective, if you said to me that I had an unlimited amount of time and not an unlimited budget, but I had a pretty healthy budget for the game,
Yep.
then I would say I want to have every outfit of every character in the game, because I think that's the only thing that's going to satisfy fans who are
Yep.
used to like all these Mugen remakes that are out there where you can have like it's got like 100 characters or whatever in it. And like that's the only way people are going to be satisfied. You know, you can't just like make your living on the HD graphics alone. It has to feel complete.
Yeah.
And I think so. So to that end, though, now the production side, the developer side is going to come out, and I'm going to say that there's only a certain amount of time that we're going to have to be able to pull this off.
Yeah.
And if Warner Brothers, knowing Warner Brothers, if they did okay the project, and I hope that they will, based on the amount of fan feedback that they're getting from the petition and everything, then there's going to be an extraordinarily short amount of time for us to work on this, and they're probably going to mandate that it comes out like December 2022, the latest, right?
Yep.
So that it's still coming out.
Yep.
You know, they could do what Resident Evil 2, I think, did, where like Resident Evil 2 Remake, it had hit some anniversary, and then they had like the developer come out and he had this shirt that said "We do it," and he pulled open his jacket, and basically it was like an announcement like, hey, you know, for the 25th or whatever anniversary of Resident Evil, we're gonna make this new game for you guys, this remake. That would be awesome, but knowing the way Warner Brothers has been in the past, and I can't say how they would be going forward, but there's going to be sort of a mandate to kind of get it rushed out there, and it's going to be a massive amount of work to get done. And for me, there's always this, I want to make the best quality game that I can make, and even if that means it's going to have a little less content to begin with, and then we have to gradually release it. And I know, like, as a fan, people hate hearing that shit because, you know, you think like, oh yeah, you're just like everybody else. You want to release a broken game or an unfinished game and then patch it later. But it's like that's kind of the reality that we're going to be faced with. It's going to take us, like, if let's say they go ahead and want to do this, right? And we reach out, you know, in January, we have like enough people, right? January 1st, right? So we have enough people have signed up. I've got to go through the channels. So it's like, I'm going to approach NetherRealm Studios. I've got to get that. That's going to be at least 3 weeks before they like get all their ducks in a row. And I can get in the room with Ed Boon and Sean Hemrick, and we can talk it over. And then if they don't like it or they don't think it's good, or maybe they're already working on something, then it's dead right there in the water. But then let's say that we get past that phase, then they're going to hand me off to Warner Brothers, and that's going to be like another, like, probably a good 3 weeks to a month of pitching. You know, I got to pitch this department, that department, until we finally get to them making a decision on it. And then they're going to take at least 3 weeks to a month to make a decision. So now you're already like in March. And then let's say all right, we're going to do it. Then they start drawing up a contract for it, right? And or they say, okay, you guys can do a Kickstarter or something like that. And it's like, so the point I'm trying to make is we may not end up getting to start the game, even if it gets the green light, until like 6 months into the next year. And then there's somebody somewhere is going to be like, oh yeah, but you got to get it done this year. So I don't care how much, you know, what it takes, make it get done in a year. And I think that's where I start to push back, because it's like, well, that's just not enough time. 6 months to do anything but a shit job on the game is just not going to be enough time. So at one point or another, there has to be a discussion over like, where's the balance between like, hooray, we're doing this and it's going to get done, and okay, how long is it actually going to take to get it done right? And that's sort of like where I stand on that entire thing. But yeah, to answer your original question, I want to put everything in the game. I would, even if it means that we have to release things in piecemeal. Or if that would be a thing that we'd have to do if they were like, you got to get it done within 6 months. But if they say no, we could we'll announce it, and then you'll have, you know, 16 months from announcement to get the game done. I think that's enough time to be able to make that vision a reality of getting like everything in there.
I do have a couple of ideas to throw your way with that, if that's all right.
Sure.
I don't want to like tell you how to do your job, but I'm gonna fucking tell you how to do your job. No. So okay. No, okay. So because I know Trilogy inside and out. So we didn't have alternate costumes, so that's not a big deal, right? That could easily come later. As an MK fan, I don't give a shit. I'd pay for it, right? And if you did something like that, you look at it as a block of like, because I know they did it with, I think, MK9 and stuff, where they go, oh, there's a pack of classic costumes but only 3 of the fucking characters get them. It's like, yeah, but what about the other ones? You know what I mean? So you can literally like base MK Trilogy. You don't need to worry about additional like classic characters yet, right? I wouldn't care about that. Like, to me, they were always a bit of a gimmick. I didn't care too much about that. I'd care more simply just having like additional costumes down the road. But you could release like, okay, here's that MK1 pack, which has got the classic MK1 characters with their costume or whatever. Like, you could do that. Certainly, like you mentioned, Mugen. Like, the Mugen projects are great. As an MK fan, to like see some of these projects, some of them are really professional. I've reviewed a couple on here so far, but I always sort of drift towards the Trilogy ones because I've always been drawn to a massive MK roster. I love a big MK roster. I love Trilogy, even though it's not my favorite, but I still love Armageddon for that very reason too, because it had all the characters up to that point as well. So you could absolutely release like essentially like a theme pack of MK1, all the characters in their classic look, maybe, and their classic characters. So you could actually choose an MK1 Liu Kang that does his fireball the way he does in MK1, So you literally do a 1-to-1. Essentially what you're doing, which is a little bit sneaky, but you're getting your MK1 and your MK2 high def versions snuck in, right? Because it's going to have all the stages, man. It's going to have all the stages, right? So you can sneak them in there, so you can have a classic MK1 Liu Kang or a classic MK Scorpion, and you're going to have all the stages, right? So you to
that point, we even talked about, if we get the go ahead, we would want to be able to allow you to change the life bars to be stylized like an MK2 or an MK1 life bar. I mean, of course you're gonna have to have the run meter in there too, but it could be really fun to allow you to be able to like use the different timer and graphics and all that stuff to, all that stuff. I think it's little and it doesn't take a lot of time to do, but it like really makes the fans feel like it's a love letter to the fans, because that's really what this is. That's what this is all about. Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, if we're gonna only have 6 months to do it, then the target's gonna be to get the base game to just match 1-to-1 to what you got in the original game. And I know that's gonna disappoint some people to hear, but that's going to be the reality if they make us rush it out, if assuming we get the opportunity to do it at all.
You could compensate with not having like the costumes or whatever, or characters, like the characters, sorry. How easy is it to do palette swap colors?
Super easy.
So you can say, well, we don't have the MK1 characters in there yet, or the MK2 versions. However, we've got 10 palette swaps or 5 palette swaps per character, so you can at least change the color.
Totally.
That'd be, if they're easy to do, that'd be kind of cool too, because we never had that shit back then either. Like, you're literally going to be like, like adding to the game, by adding simply all the stages and that alone, that's a lot,
Yeah, I mean, totally. I don't know if you're familiar with Ultra Street Fighter 2. I think it's called, for the Nintendo Switch. Came out in 2017. And one of the things they added was that like you could make your characters, you could palette swap. Like they give you a whole. You could change it to almost any color. You could make you could make some really ugly looking characters if you wanted to, but you could change all of that stuff. And people seem to eat that up and think that was cool. But I think one of the downsides was that you couldn't play those characters online, so it was only local only, which was kind of it was kind of defeated the purpose a little bit, because then you couldn't show it off. But it's very easy to do.
Okay, there is, because you mentioned the run meter before. One of the I don't know if I reviewed it yet or not, but I've got it. One of the Mugen projects I have for MK, you can actually add or disable the run meter for
Oh,
those
that's cool.
games, right? So you can add a run meter to MK2 version, which is
That'd be
fucking
amazing.
crazy, right? Or
Yep.
disable it completely. Could that be something you could do? We could actually disable the run meter so it goes to more very classic Mortal Kombat, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean that would be pretty cool, right? Like, I'm not sure what the vision would be for this project, if we have the opportunity to pitch it to Ed Boon, which I'm hoping is relatively soon, right?
Yeah.
Depending on once we get enough people to sign that petition.
Yep.
I think that that's going to have a major impact on like whether or not they even want to go forward with it. And I think that it's a really good sign that we're getting like 1,000 people a day now,
Yep.
to sign up, which is just amazing. I don't know how long that's going to last, but I want to ride that out until it seems to peter off, and then that'll be probably the right time to approach Ed and company over at NetherRealm. But when we approach them now, this will be the third time that I'm talking to Ed, and it was funny because the first time I talked to him, I was like, "You're like my version of George Lucas," and going through like what he means to me. And then the second time around, I think I started it was 2 years later, and I was like, "Well, here we are again, Ed." And he was laughing because it was like, I'm not going to tell you that you're like my George Lucas and this, and I'm like, because I bet you just want to get to the point this time around. And he thought that was funny, but so this would be like the third time he's seeing my mug, and I feel like I need to have a plan. And the thing that I've been struggling with, and this was something you talked about this morning also, you said you hated it, so I'm going to probably make you angry. Oh. But there's I don't know if you've been paying attention to what Warner Brothers is doing now with this Multiverses project. Have you heard about that?
Yep.
Yeah, and so it's free to play, and free to play is like where it's at right now. A lot of companies are realizing that they can make a lot longer tail. They call it a long tail on a game. Yep. Typically in the games industry, we look at a 24-month period. When the game launches, the first 6 months, that's what the game is probably going to do the lion's share of its sales. Yep. After that, it peters off into almost nothing, and then you have a year later, you put it on discount. First it's 20%, then it's 30%, eventually it's 50%, and then you really don't go too much lower than 50%. Until you're in the second year at the last 3 months of that second year. Yep. And you're just trying to get whatever money you can get for it. But now with games like Fortnite and PUBG, and I mean PUBG's old now, but there's so many of those free to play games. Dota and what's the other? League of Legends.
League of Legends, yep.
These games make billions of dollars, and so everybody's got. It's interesting because Warner Brothers is very traditional, typically with this kind of thing. They don't do a lot of. I want to say, I might be wrong, but I think this Multiverses is going to be their first free-to-play game. Don't quote me on that.
Yep.
And I think it's an interesting shift that they're making because it's risky because you can totally make a free-to-play game and everybody plays it, and that's great. And then they get bored with it, and then nobody buys anything on the store, and then you're just kind of stuck with whatever the development cost was.
Yep.
And anyway, what I have been thinking about, because of what I'm anticipating is going to happen, where I'm going to have very little time to make the game as I want it to, and there's going to be a strict deadline on it, I feel like the one particular potential avenue we could go is to make it free to play and only offer a certain number of characters like Killer Instinct did, and those characters cycle from month to month, and then you unlock them through combat coins or whatever the stuff is that you're going to go through. However, also what you can do, I don't know if you're familiar with a game called Brawlhalla. Have you ever heard of that?
Yep. No, that's a good game.
Brawlhalla has this really cool thing where if you can pay like I think it's 19.99 or whatever, it's whatever you want the full price of the game to be, and it just instantly unlocks all the characters
Yep.
for you, so you don't have to go through that. And then if they add new characters, which they will, you get those too. It's like
Yep.
you've already prepaid for all the DLC that you're going to need to prepay for. So that is it. I find that to be an interesting formula because I know that that's going to be like Warner Brothers would be excited about that because they'd be like, we got this multiversus game, and now this would hit that. I could see the marketing guys at Warner Brothers being like, they would just like they'd be like gleeful. They'd have smiles on the grins ear to ear on their faces, talking about software as a service, where basically it's like in a game that it never ends, right? Like you just keep adding to it and adding to it. I mean, eventually with Mortal Kombat 11, they say, oh, we're going to stop supporting it, but you get to a point where you just keep adding stuff, and it gives you time. Also, the game starts making money in the meantime, and it puts you in a position where you can take your time and do everything right, and just keep adding stuff. And so, like, I keep bringing back Killer Instinct because that game was incredibly successful for Microsoft. They had like 6 million people play it, and then they just sold the characters as they were making them, and I think it actually started out with like 4 characters, which was like really, bare bones. We wouldn't be that bad, but we wouldn't. There's also the possibility that like we just don't have all the characters ready that the original game had in that 6-month period of time, and so like that then we would have to do like, okay, but they're coming, and like so you get a patch and you get an update, and so for the people that want like a physical copy of the game, a disc-based copy of the game for collectors' purposes, they can buy the game and they automatically get like the entire game unlocked. Of course, if they want to lock all the characters and go through that sort of like level system where they level up and play through it, and you got to beat it on easy, medium, and hard. You got to do all these numbers of fatalities and all these challenges, and as you do that, that unlocks characters in the game. You can do that if you want, because there's some people that like that. But if you want, because you paid for the whole thing, you can just unlock all the characters, because I think you mentioned it, like if you're having a bunch of people come over and you want to be able to just play all the characters, and you paid for the game, you paid $39.99 for the game, or whatever we end up charging for it, then you should be able to do that too. So I'm kind of torn because everybody says kind of what you say, like I hate having to slog through this to like unlock a character, but I can also see the other side of it, like when you just don't have enough time to make all of the characters and make the game the way you want it to be, and there's this pressure to kind of push it out there. That would be one potential way to do it, where you say, okay, look, it's free to play, everybody can get involved, have fun with it, have at it, and then just gradually release stuff, and for people who are like mega fans, like I'm going to buy the game, but I want to get, like, when I buy it, I get for the life of the project. Anything new you add to it is just, it's just added.
It's easy. I figured it out. Because, like, I got, I mostly play on PC, right? My Steam library, and this is no joke, if you find me on Steam, my Steam library is, this is where I get to have big dick moment. 7,473 games. That's how many I own on Steam. Right.
Wow, that's massive.
Right. And I got that because when I played on the PS3 a lot, because I've always played on PC, but for the PS3 generation, I pretty much only played like WoW on PC, right? I invested all my money into PS3. I bought like nearly 400 physical games, and then I have like a 400 or 500 strong library of digital games. And then I traded in at EB Games, it was what they call it here in Australia. I traded in all my games, and they said, well, if you want cash, we take 20%, but I had like one of their sort of like their reward card type things, which added 20%. So I actually ended up, when I traded in all my games, the physical ones, I ended up, I think, making about $4,000.
Wow.
For real, right? And then I reinvested all of that back into PC. I bought a whole bunch of hard drives, I upgraded and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I don't really sort of play too much on consoles because PC is everything for me. Now, the reason why I'm
Right.
saying all that is because I've also invested a lot in early access games,
Okay.
right? So early access games, I mean, you know this, like early access games, and for the people that don't know, basically you're, getting people in on the ground floor, at whatever level you've decided to release to the public. They can invest in it, by buying it outright, like you were saying. You could buy, a character pack that gives you everything. Early access, you could go, well, this is the asking price, and everything that comes out after that, that's it, that's yours. So the early access route, sometimes there's scammers out there, obviously, but you're not. But like most of the time, I buy early access because I can see the potential, I can see where they're going, and they've got good development, got good feedback. And especially on Steam, where you've got like your connected communities and discussion forums and stuff like that, you can share a lot of feedback, straight to the developer, so to you guys, and you can see that, and you can see changes happening. And so when you're talking right now, I just kept thinking early access, right? Now, I don't know if they have that on consoles yet. I'm not 100% sure, but they definitely do have that on Steam, right? And
yeah, early access is super appealing. But as far as I know, and I think you're right, like there's no equivalent to that on the consoles.
Yep.
And that's where a lot of the money is made. So there's usually an emphasis on consoles. Although that's not necessarily true. I mean, there's games on PC that make tons of money.
Did you know that, do you remember that Street Fighter game, the Akira series of Street Fighter games that came out in the arcade and the PS1? They were the 3D versions of Street Fighter. Like they still played
Street
like
Fighter X, I think.
Yeah, Street Fighter X. Yeah, EX.
Yep.
So so without the Street Fighter characters, there is a fighting game. I don't think it's on console yet. It might be, but it started off on PC. It's called Fighting Layer EX. And all of those characters that aren't the Capcom characters that were put into that game, they actually made a fighting game out of that and on PC. Fighting games on PC are actually like they're becoming more and more popular, and they generally do really well. And I think it's because companies too are realizing that there's money on the table if they don't release their stuff on PC now in general.
For sure.
And like if you look it up, Fighting Layer EX, and it has all of those characters that was in the Akira series for it, and it does, it's really good. Oh, sorry, it's called Fighting EX Layer. I just had the words around the wrong way. Fighting EX Layer, right?
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
Just it's something I never heard of.
Oh, it's Eureka, not Akira. I'll get the names right eventually. But yeah, like they even got Terry in there from King of Fighters. They must have had some deal with that. But ultimately, you can see there for the DLC anyway, they're selling like colors, like gold and silver colors for all the different characters. That came out on early access, handles beautifully, like really well. And even though it's only got a small player base, it was successful. Really good reviews on there and whatnot. And so
it's high quality.
Yeah. If that sort of route can help, even if it started off on PC, and it's obviously it's going to be developed well and stuff like that, then you can slow burn it maybe. But I guess it comes down to Warner Brothers. It depends how long they want that to roll.
So when you said release it on PC first and then sort of branch out from there.
Yeah.
It's been my experience now, having worked with more than one publisher, not just Warner Brothers, but like the publisher we're working with now, and we worked with a publisher about a year ago, big publisher, to release a game that ended up getting canceled, unfortunately. But every single one of them in those three scenarios basically all said the same thing. You have to do a simultaneous release. Otherwise, for whatever reason, I don't know if this is marketing data that they have or whatever, like you're leaving money on the table If you do, because like there's like they showed it to me one time. One of the companies I was working with, they showed there's like a tracking, like almost like a line you can follow when a game releases. It's like the
Yep.
hype for that game goes way up and then it peters out. And if you do your job right, then it'll stay high for a certain period of time, and then it dips down
Yep.
and then completely goes into almost like irrelevance where nobody cares about it or plays it.
Yep.
And so what I think they're trying to do is they're trying to like the nightmares that you release it on PC, all the hype goes there, everybody buys it, that's going to buy it for that, and then you try to release it on consoles later on, and then like that hype that you had and all the marketing money that you spent on hyping it up for the PC
Yep.
could have been used for all platforms, and that
Yep.
wouldn't have cost you much more. But now you've got to spend like that again to get people to like, oh, but now the console version's coming, and so now it's like it's hard to get people back to that original
Yep.
level of hype. So that's why they just want to release it all at once. And I think a lot of it really comes down to marketing, right? Like
Yep.
the marketing budget gets set, and then they're like, we just want to do this one time and then be done with it, and then
Yep.
move on to the next product that we're going to market. So that's one of the reasons why that model doesn't necessarily work in this particular case. Like when you're talking about a really popular title like
Yep.
Mortal Kombat. The other side of it too is that I think Warner Brothers is they make the lion's share of their money from consoles.
Yep.
They've made a lot of money on PC, and so they know they have to release on PC or they're leaving lots of money on the table. But that's not where they're making, like most people are buying the Mortal Kombat 11s and 10s or whatever at, they're buying them for the consoles and then playing them, and then like the PC becomes sort of like, hey, if this is gravy, if like we can make extra money with PC. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is right now. I think that, to your point though, there is a shift that is occurring where a lot more people are playing fighting games on their PCs because you can hook up an Xbox controller to your PC and it's like a really powerful console thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's taken some people a while to realize that, or some people know that, and they're like, well, I just don't want to spend $1,000 to have like a graphics card, to have like slightly better graphics and higher frame rate when I can just buy a console and I don't have to deal with like the updating my drivers for my graphics card. Some of the stuff that you like might have to deal with. It's a little bit more technical. For a console player who just wants to pay, like pop the disc in and go. You know?
That's true.
So yeah, I mean it's a good point. I just don't know if it would work. I think a lot of it is going to be, and you brought this up before. A lot of it's going to be mandated by Warner Brothers. Unfortunately, even like Ed has only so much that power that he has to be able to guide the project. Like he gets the ultimate like go or no go on it. But in the past it was Ed supporting us and being like, okay, Warner Brothers, you got to talk to these guys, and then them being like, yeah, well, we kind of make the decision at the end of the day. It's really not up to Ed. And so it's a little disappointing to hear that and to say that, but it's kind of where it's at. Like they're the parent company, and so they control what does or doesn't get done. And I guess it's just the way it is until or unless somebody else owns the Mortal Kombat property, the IP.
It's like, I mean, I was thinking, like, I think I said it in the video, it'd be like if it did get picked up, and I mean, to me it would be successful because just from the screenshots alone, it looks amazing. It would open that door that you would have the opportunity possibly to do other ones, and
I mean, honestly, that's a thing that I've been trying to sell to them since 2018, really kind of in the back of my mind, and it's not a thing that they were seeing, but I believe, I mean, you can etch this on my gravestone, but I believe that Mortal Kombat, the original games, still holds a lot of nostalgic benefit to just such a huge amount of Mortal Kombat fans.
Yep.
And I envision a world that I want this to be the reality. I don't know if it'll ever happen, where like you could have a Mortal Kombat Trilogy 2 or something like that, where you're starting to take newer characters from like MK11, like the Collector, like really cool all those characters, like Aaron Black. I know you said you don't like characters that shoot, but like characters that Devora, like some of those cool characters, and then you put them in that 2D style.
Yeah.
And really, like, how cool would it be to like sit down with Ed and really kind of be like, all right, Ed, like if you were going to program this character, like what would you want them to do, and like how would you want them to play? And I know he would. I don't know if he would have time for it, but in my dream, we would like where the birds are singing around, or we're holding hands around the campfire. This would be like this sort of like synergy that we'd get to have, where we'd be able to take the past and sort of rejuvenate it for the future, and like sort of like a what if, kind of like, what if we never went down the path of like full 3D, and like you just stuck with that older, simpler style Mortal Kombat that fans have grown to know and love? Would it be enough to just continue down that pathway, alternate and completely different from the 3D era Mortal Kombat that they're now?
Like, all right, so you mentioned, because they've done this for a while, because they did it with Killer Instinct. But I think before Killer Instinct, they tried, and I think they did it a little bit. I think Soul Calibur and Dead or Alive had free-to-play models as well, right? I am getting to a point here, right? So I'm hearing you talk, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, all right, so I love that idea, actually. I really do. We see it a lot, yet again, in the Mugen community, of taking characters that are traditionally 3D, like from MK11, and then making them into a 2D factor, so you can play like Havoc, versus like a classic version of Raiden, right?
Yep.
So, how do I say this? You make MK Trilogy, but so you said, okay, well, what if they went down the road of making it like a free-to-play service, right?
Yep.
But this has kind of been my thought for a while. I'm having a stroke right now, but I promise I'm getting to it, because I think about this all the time. Whereas I am getting to a point now where I'm not liking sequels in fighting games. What I want is for them to just fucking stick to like their fighting game, right? So for example, rather than calling it Mortal Kombat 12, right, or Mortal Kombat 11, they just have Mortal Kombat, right?
Yeah.
And they just able to add stages and characters over time, right?
Yep.
To this game, and just build up their roster. Like, it gives a shit about balancing and stuff. Like I said, there's always going to be people that'll figure stuff out, right? Even if you try and police it as much as you can. But the fighting game as a service, I think, with Killer Instinct has proven extremely popular. Now, in the MMO space, and we've been seeing this a lot in recent years, they have upgraded the graphics engines of certain MMOs.
Sure.
So they don't make a sequel.
Is a great example, right?
World of Warcraft, they did it just recently with Blade and Soul, going from Unreal Engine 3 to Unreal Engine 4. So that way you still got your game, but upgraded. So I'm not trying to tell you what to do, right? I'm just saying, like, what you're saying, and I'm thinking about Trilogy, and I'm thinking, what if the angle is like, look, we can create essentially a 2-lane system of, they bring out the new 3D Mortal Kombat that obviously is going to be popular and everyone will play it, whatever, yada yada yada, right? But at the same time, concurrently, they also have a 2D engine that you're running right beside it, that also has a 2D counterpart of that character, like Devora, like Aaron Black, that also comes over into the 2D space, right? In a more traditional classic MK. So we have brand new modern MK, then we have the 2D more classic styled MK, but both, like, and especially the 2D one, just keeps adding those characters to it, right?
Yeah.
As a service, as pushing it through, like, you know, like as that sort of like free to play service. As you said, even games like Smite and Paladins, I can't remember the company name. You know, you buy the character pack and you just get all the characters. Doesn't matter how many they release. So, so as a service, would Mortal Kombat Trilogy Remake or 4K work in that capacity? Where you go, oh, you made a new character, cool. Can we make that? Can we now take that, make the 2D version, and put it into our game? Right? Could that be possible?
I think that would be like, you know, it would be kind of like Fortnite, basically. Like there's an opportunity to. I mean, obviously MK11 is kind of doing this to some degree with like microtransactions and making it so that like, oh, okay, you can level up characters and then you can buy character packs, and they have, you know, the seasonal kind of thing, like, oh, this is, you know, season 1 character, season 2, all that kind of stuff. Or I guess it's combat packs or whatever they do. But I think you could do it a lot like Fortnite, if you're familiar with that. Like where you just keep constantly releasing, instead of costumes, you're releasing characters. And because these characters are in 2D, there's more of a simplicity behind making a character like that than there is for the 3D games. That's not to say that you don't have to think about it, because obviously they'll have new moves and they'll have different things, but you can basically, you know, there's so many characters in the Mortal Kombat universe at this point, in 2D even, that you can basically start to, it's going to be hard for you to come up with like a completely brand new character that does nothing like any other character does. You're going to start to have some overlap there. And so, like, the new characters that they add, even if they can fly and stuff like that, I mean, like, you can think of, like, no matter what you can think of, there's probably a character in Mortal Kombat 2D that has some aspect of that in their gameplay. So, I honestly think that it would be a great way to it's Mortal Kombat as a live service, and it's just leaning right into, like, everything from making it free to play so that everybody who wants to play it can play it, to giving the fans what they want. Like, you know, I've had people say to me, I would love to do, you know, it would be so cool if you had different settings to the stages, like you know, the warrior shrine with all the statues. Not at night, have it with like the sun rising behind it. We were messing with some of that stuff before our pitch to Ed back when we were doing Mortal Kombat Returns.
So you could have like a morning, midday, and nighttime.
Totally.
That'd be awesome.
Then now that we're talking about Unreal Engine 5, we have the power to, like, I mean, if we really wanted to do it, we could do it all in real time and like have it so that, like, as you're fighting, you know, the sun rises and it becomes like night. You know, it would happen very quickly, but it would be kind of be cool to have, if you wanted to do that. You could have stages that were had rain included and snow and all sorts of like weather patterns and stuff like that. We even talked about having it be that the rain and snow effects or wind effects will affect the gameplay, so you can have it so that, like, you're pushing against the wind when you're trying to, like, fight the other character. Some of that stuff could be just completely annoying, but it could also be really fun.
Well,
so I think,
they had that stuff, didn't they? Have that stuff, like they brought in like the, you know, like the different sort of like effects on combat. I think they brought that in with MK3, with the codes that you can put in the versus screen. And then in MK9, I think they had, like, you know, they just went crazy with, like, you know, all these different variables. I think that'd be, I think that'd be cool. It's so weird. Like, a long time ago, me and this friend of mine, we ran a Mortal Kombat website called Mortal Kombat Australia, and he and I started developing this game just on paper, and we're going to call it Conquer. And it was basically like an MMO styled, you know, MK game, but when you fought like people, it went into like a 2D space, which was cool. But one of the things was that, and we called it, and we we talked about things like every stage should have like a stage fatality, right?
Mhm.
You know, things like that. Like it feels like, you know, especially with the newer games, I hate a small amount of stages, and then I even hate it like more when there's like, you know, some of those, they don't even have stage fatalities. You know, stage
Mhm.
fatalities I always thought was, you know, always great. But what would you do on the courtyard, right? Like, what would be something cool that, you know, you could do as a stage fatality? Like, well, you could just like grab them and throw them into the fucking Buddha statue, you know,
Yeah,
or
we
you
ha-
know,
it's so
or
funny
stuff
that
like
you
that.
mentioned that because we actually have drawings somewhere. I have to see if I can dig those up, but there's a drawing somewhere of a potential stage fatality on that particular stage, and we talked about like the Buddha, you know, what was it? Not the Buddha. It was, you know, how on the left hand side, I think it is. There's that sort of concrete shrine,
Yep.
and how you could uppercut them and like splatter them across the like you hit them so hard that they like splatter on the they fly into the background and like splatter against the concrete. And we had some drawings about that stuff, and we were playing with all these kinds of ideas because we come from, you know, the Mugen sort of background.
Yep.
That was the first engine that we built any of back in 2011, like going way back when it was the Mortal Kombat HD Remix project, is what we
Yep.
called it. We were making the characters in HD, but then everybody was like, "Man, like it's so boring to just remake Mortal Kombat. You should do it, but now make it so that you can play Reptile and that you can do his fatalities." And like a lot of people wanted more of like an MK Trilogy style to even MK1. It's like that one. And I had to constantly be like, guys, we're just focusing on making MK1
Yep.
like from a purist perspective, because there was so much of that, and it makes it difficult, especially for a fan project, to keep
Yep.
everybody doing and you
Yep.
know keep everybody motivated to even finish anything. So we were constantly like, no, we're just going to do the main Mortal Kombat. But we talked about all of those things, like all of those things. And then even like when we had the opportunity to pitch Ed, I think it was the first time or maybe the second time, I think it was the second time, with Mortal Kombat Returns, where we were saying, okay, so the pitch this time around is it's not going to be the original Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3. It is going to be as close as we can get it, but
Yep.
we're going to set the expectation that there are going to be certain things that are different
Yep.
from the game. And when I talked to Ed, the first thing he said to me was, we would just give you the source code. And so I quickly realized that from Ed's perspective anyway, that he would prefer, I think, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I
Yep.
think he would prefer we kept the games as close to the original
Yep.
as possible, because that's his work. He like coded that stuff himself, and so
Yep.
there's a labor of love behind it.
Yep.
And to some degree, I think he sees Mugen as sort of a bastardization of what his work is. I mean, there's no denying it. That's what it is. But and so yeah, so he's more of a purist, and so I quickly realized that like the slides that I had, I think I didn't even show them, talking about like, oh yeah, we could have stage fatalities in places where they weren't and all that stuff. I didn't even show that stuff because
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I'm getting the sense that that's not what he would be into.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I am 100% on board with a Mortal Kombat free-to-play trilogy where it becomes, like you said earlier, in a sneaky sort of way, like you could basically, through parameter settings, end up releasing Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3. Now,
Yep.
people are going to have to pay for that because it's Warner Brothers
Yep.
and they're going to want to make money. But you're always going to deal with people who are like, well, you know, what's the right value for this? You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like even if like I don't know if this was something you said, somebody said it to me recently. Like, isn't there like 50 some? There's over 50 characters, I believe, in Trilogy, and it's like if you start adding in like like Liu Kang from Mortal Kombat 1, which I know wasn't in the original, but like if you start doing that, even if you charged $1 per character, you're gonna be charging a lot of money for this game.
Yep.
I mean, it's sort of like that's on purpose, right? Like that's on purpose. It's to make the most amount of money for the game because it is a business at the end of the day, but also give the fans what they want. So it's just it's a tough balance. And I know if we went free to play, some people would be like, oh, that game is garbage and it's lost the soul of what Mortal Kombat is. And there's going to be people that are going to hate it for that. And if we go and we say, no, it's going to be like you get the full game and it's more traditional and it's $39.99, there's going to be people who are going to complain about that. And they're going to be like, well, this game is missing this, this, and this. And even if we say, oh, we're going to release that in patches and updates, when the reviewers come to look at it, they're not going to be like, oh, well, they said in the future they're going to release this, this, and this. But, we found it disappointing that it didn't even have, like, all the same stuff that the 1996, original had.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that we're kind of up against. So, but I think it's a really interesting approach. I think it's the future. I think if we pitched this like that, it has a much greater chance of happening than if we pitch a traditional game in 2021, 2022. I just don't think that I know for a fact that, I won't say names, but I talked to Warner Brothers finance guy, and he said to me, Joe, it just doesn't make sense for us because, we looked over the data. We think that this game is going to sell at best 100,000 copies worldwide, which I completely disagree with. And I told him so. But he said, it's just not worth it for us to chase a few $1 million, right? Like that's at the end of the day, that's what we're looking at. Like we would choose, if we're lucky, we break even or we chase a few $1 million. And then the only value then becomes what it means from a marketing perspective. But it's like Mortal Kombat doesn't need marketing to sell. So it's not like, it's like unless we're promoting some title like a new Injustice game, at the time it would have been Injustice 2.
Yep.
Then it's just like it doesn't make sense for us to like use the Mortal Kombat brand. Basically just make this as a fan service we're just not gonna make money off of it.
Yeah.
So, that's sort of what we're up against here. And but yeah, I think 100% what you said, having it be a Mortal Kombat that doesn't ever require a sequel. Like I think I originally said, Mortal Kombat Trilogy 2, but the idea of like the way MMOs release, where the core game is the same. It's just that you can, if you want to upgrade the graphics 10 years from now, sure, go ahead and do it. Upgrade to Unreal 6 or 7 or whatever it ends up being. But the characters themselves, should be able to easily upgrade with it. You know what I mean? Well, I think we're at this point now where the graphics aren't going to improve from not from a realism standpoint, but like the fidelity of how sharp things can get. It's getting to the point where, and you're seeing this now, like even with the generation shift from like say PlayStation 4 to 5. 5 looks better, but there's a ton of games that on PlayStation 5 you could easily imagine looking like you can't tell the difference, like PlayStation 5 to PlayStation 4. Yeah. Now once the Unreal Engine 5 releases and everything like in full-fledged, and you start to see games that take advantage of that power, then you're going to see the difference. But the PlayStation 4 is still going to get Unreal Engine 5, and so if they release games on PlayStation 4 with that engine, you may not be able to do it at 4K 60 frames per second, but the graphics are still going to look great. So all that to say that I believe your point about releasing the game once and then upgrading the graphics and then just constantly releasing characters could really be a great strategy to just continuously. It's not even seasonal then. It's just like you're just constantly releasing. Yeah. And I don't know if you play like Call of Duty, but like those games really, I don't know. Graphically they've changed, but it's like the same game over and over and over again. there's obviously new, there's new scenarios if you're talking about like a single player campaign, or sometimes it's in World War II, or sometimes it's in the future. But the base concept of like the shooting mechanic really doesn't change that much. And so I think that's an example of a game that you could release one of them instead of releasing one every year, and just like upgrade it. If there was a way to do that, like with a season pass or something like that, I wonder how well that would do. Maybe it wouldn't do well, but I wonder how well it would do. Like Destiny is a good example, right? Destiny 1, Destiny 2. Like Destiny 2 has been around now for a while. Are they going to make a Destiny 3? Like, it doesn't seem like it. It seems like they're just going to take Destiny 2 and make the graphics, they improve the graphics to 60 frames per second on the consoles, the new consoles, Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. But outside of that, it's like, it's the same game, and they just keep releasing packs for it. So totally on board with that. The more I think about it, the biggest hurdle is, how do you explain that in a pitch where you have maybe 15 minutes to get your point across? That's the challenge, right? Like getting that out. And then if they're not into it for whatever reason, you've got to have a backup plan. I know that from experience. So, because you have to be willing to be like, or we could go with the traditional route and just sell the game for $39.99, and as long as you give us enough time, we'll get all the characters in and we'll add a few extras too. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Food for thought.
Yeah, I'm eating a lot of that. I think so if you did a free to play model, obviously, because I've got all these ideas, like, because lots of games have things like season passes and packs and all that sort of crap. You mentioned before about having things where people could get the classic MK1, MK2 health bars and all sorts of things like that. There is actually a lot, there's a lot of money to be made, and it's about showing them and say, look, people can dive in, they can play as like 4 characters straight away, right now, boom, right, instantly, They can buy a pack, so it means that all the characters that are coming through, they'll get, and it won't sort of, I don't know, I don't know fucking how you do it, but like, I would love, and because of, like I said, I look at your pictures that you've released so far, the quality of that is great, right? So you know how to do it, and the upgrade from the classic 2D to that style is always going to look clean and crisp. I mean, those health bars and everything is just beautiful, man. Like, they're just clean, like beautifully clean. There's no pixelization or anything like that. It looks amazing. Like I said, you can even see the split in the tab eye on the ninja shoes. I thought, that's wow. Like, you could never see that before, right? So, so it's going to look great, and I just, like, it would still look great in 5 years. It'd still look great in 10 years. Because that's why Mugen projects are so popular, because, people, like, they're happy with how the characters look. They don't care so much about having newer looks. They care more about the quality of the gameplay and stuff like that. So, you set your standard engine that with the potential to, I always think about this in PC terms with upgrading. Right, I don't ever get top of the line. I get near enough so it will last a few years, and then hopefully, if I do need to upgrade again, my motherboard will then allow me to upgrade to the new CPU. So your engine will look great, but then if a new one comes out, you can go, oh, this will be easy. I can easily just upgrade to Unreal Engine 6, and that's all fine. It's not going to affect anyone. It's going to be, it's all good. It's just the pitch on that, because like, there's just like this massive wealth of MK, from Trilogy backwards, that is just, I don't know, it's I don't know, man, like, shit, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. Like,
Well, I think one of the things that you touched on early on, I think we talked about this early on in the stream, but one of the things that attracted me to Mortal Kombat, it sounds like attracted you too, is the mystique behind it.
Yep.
And that's one of the things I've always loved about, especially Mortal Kombat 2 really leaned into that, and 3 continues it. But there's a tree in the background in the living forest, and it's got like this guy. I think his name is Alma, actually. And he's like wrapped up in and he looks like the tree has like killed him or something. And I don't know if being a kid, I think I was 14 or 15 when that game came out, and I remember like the ubiquity of the internet wasn't there, so there was like people were like, oh man, like wouldn't it be cool if that guy came alive, and like or like you can feed your opponent to the trees or whatever. That mystique, like, oh, what's the deal with that Liu Kang character that's like on fire? I forgot. There's a name that they came up with. And there's Hornbuckle, the other guy.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and it's like all this stuff. It would be so cool to take some of that stuff too that never actually got made it into any of the newer games, and just go down that route. Like, just take it where it can go, and just add more of those crazy secrets, like. On the stage where you're in the arena, it was always like, oh yeah, you can. I remember specifically. It's so crazy how I have like this memory of exactly the lie that I was told, or the lie that people would tell about that particular, the arena from Mortal Kombat 2, where you have Kano and Sonya locked up.
Yep.
And it was always like, I remember it was like, oh yeah, if you do this certain combination, you switch characters with them, and you can take control of them.
Oh shit!
And
yep.
and it would say excellent, a life for a life, and it's like you I think it was EGM. Somebody like literally had fake screenshots, because the EGM is probably EGM because they did all that stuff with like Shang Long and like fake Ermac. I think was there doing as well. That stuff would be. I feel like there's a certain number of Mortal Kombat fans that are just dying for shit like that. Like, want that. I talked in another stream recently about like the meteorite from, I guess, MK11. Like, nobody realized that what that was, that from a secret standpoint.
Yep.
And so there's still some of that, but it's not as much as what they had in MK2 and MK3, where you're like, you look into the backgrounds and there's so much story to be told. Like, what else can we say about this? And like, what else could we do with this? Like, it would be cool to have a character that, and you could make new characters too. Like, wouldn't it be cool to have a character that's like made out of like the living forest tree wood? Like, it's like a tree that literally that you fight with. I don't know, like stuff like that. Like, really is really interesting to me, and I would love to take that what if approach to it and really lean into that. And I feel like if we had sort of this avenue to be able to do that, this vessel, like Mortal Kombat Trilogy live service, whatever it would be, there would be the opportunity to really just explore all those crazy ideas and concepts. And again, like in my Kumbaya dream, I'm also like approaching, Tobias on and I'm asking him like, what are the characters that you wanted to put in the game that, like, I know you have like a notebook of characters that you just,
he would.
You know what I mean? Like, let's just do it. Let's just put them all in, like every single one of them. Let's do it. Let's like let's meditate, put ourselves back into that time period. Like, what's the thing that you wish you did? Or like, you have a crazy new idea, let's do it. That would be, I feel like people would lose their shit over it. Because I know I would. As a fan, I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, the idea of taking something from my past that I absolutely love and then extending it in any way, shape, or form, just like, it warms the cockles of my heart, So, I don't know. I think that it would be a really cool thing to do. And I don't know that, unless you're like a super fan it maybe doesn't seem as evident to like a business minded person over at WB.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge, right? Like getting that over to them to understand, like, look, the fan base is crazy about the mysticism that Mortal Kombat has to bring, and there's so much we can explore, and we don't have to make this like a one-off nostalgic kind of thing. It can sort of take its own shape and become its own stream of revenue and its own business line, where you have, Mortal Kombat can be divided into like those who love the more complicated, 3D games, the Mortal Kombat 12s. They don't have to stop doing those. And then also for the players that want that more traditional kind of Mortal Kombat, we're providing that also. So, man, I think it's a great idea. Like, the more I talk about it, the more I'm just like, I gotta write all this stuff down.
I have two new names, right? If you because you obviously got Mortal Kombat Trilogy, right? But we're talking a lot about live service, but it's kind of like splintering away from that a little bit. But you could simply call it Mortal Kombat Live.
Yeah.
Right. I don't care. I don't care if you take the name. I don't fucking care, right? Because to me, I like I said, I play a lot of Mugen. I see a lot of it, and I think to myself, imagine something like this, but mainstream. Where,
100%.
because also with Mugen, you probably know this too. They have like screen packs, right? So you can change literally like the character select screen. To an MK2 theme or an MK1 theme, or stuff like that. And so to be able to have that, like that sort of, imagine just like batshit crazy for a second, because my favorite character is Scorpion, right?
Yeah.
So you can choose between MK. You could choose like MK1 Scorpion, but. And this is the crazy part, but you have the harpoon aesthetic from MK Trilogy, right? So
right.
like kind of what they do with MK11, where you can have all these and I'm not a big fan of kind of like all the piecemeal stuff in MK11. I'm more traditional outfit type, but because you'd literally, you said like palette swapping is really easy. Well, imagine being able to simply swap. Well, I'm playing his Ultimate MK3 version of Scorpion, but I want to have his rope dart instead. I don't want to have the sort of the one that looks more updated and stuff that we have in MK Trilogy or Ultimate MK3. I want to have the one that's all the way back from MK1, but I want that. So, and same with Fireball. Like Subby's Freeze Ball looks a lot different in MK1 than it does in Ultimate MK3. I guess depending on who you use, classic or unmasked. But I wonder if that's a thing too. Like you could have that, I'm going to play as classic MK Scorpion, but I'm going to have the newer visual harpoon, and for when he does that move from Ultimate. I don't know if that's I mean, they do it on Mugen. Like that's the thing. Like it's crazy some of the shit I've seen. Fucking batshit crazy special moves and and things like that I never thought. And I just. Even things like, okay, I love Scorpion's leg takedown. I fucking love it. I used to piss people off with it. I still do. I love that move. They brought it back in MKX, right? But before that, they got rid of it. They didn't have it in Ultimate at all. And I thought that was a shame. And, things like that, it's like, oh, what's that? That's that favorite move? Oh, we're just going to patch that in for you. It's like, I mean, yeah, man, like, that'd be cool. Do you know what I mean? Like stuff like that.
Being able to swap out projectiles, being able to swap out, having like the MK1 characters being able to run.
Yep.
Which would be super fun to see. All that stuff, or being able to taking out the run altogether. There's also new things that you could add where, you could really. We could go crazy with the amount of things that could be added to it, but yeah, it's fun to think about. It really is.
Imagine like a dismemberment system, right? So like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it in the 2D space. Because I was thinking, because like in MK Armageddon, they brought in, I thought the custom fatality I thought was a pretty cool concept. But other
Hmm.
fighting games, like I mentioned earlier, like Bloodstorm, you were, I think Time Killers as well, you were actually able to dismember them in combat. So certain
Yes.
sort of like attacks that you do would actually like, chop their arm off or, cut them off at the waist and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I just sort of wonder if like there was a way that imagine like fighting and then you cut someone's arm off and then they're just hobbling around with blood spurting out. And it sounds crazy, but like it's been done in fighting games before, you
Oh yeah.
know, and they worked fairly well too. It's just, but that's the thing. Like if you have that sort of live service, it's I mean, a lot of it, a lot of things can be crowdfunded. I'm sure a lot of people would crowdfund it. Hell, I'd fucking help you, because that that sort of to to have an MK live service, constantly running, where you constantly get characters, constantly getting stages, new game modes or systems that can be put in place, and people play classic MK games online. I don't know if you know this. There's something called Retrocade, and Fightcade. Sorry, my bad. Fightcade, and it's you can like I never thought it was possible, but you can literally. I've played people arcade version of alternate MK3 online.
That's
It's
amazing. Yeah,
insane.
I've never used it, but I know of it. Yeah.
It's insane, and it's just
Yeah, it's
using
really
like the
cool.
arcade ROMs and off you go. And I think, geez, imagine that, and so there is a lot of love and a lot of like people just love MK, like classic MK. Obviously they look at something like MK11 and go, oh, it sold millions, that's what people want. It's like, well, it's MK's on the box, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
as you said before, like yeah, I mean I get bored of the X-ray moves after a while, or whatever they call the crushing blows, the final blows, what the fuck, and then the fatality is like watching a feature-length film,
Yeah.
they've exchanged the brutality of how quick and vicious it was to slowing it all right down and going, oh, now we need gore porn, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I'm not squeamish, but it doesn't do anything for me. When Scorpion first did his harpoon slash, where he slices across the gut and then cuts your head off, that's like bang bang. That's like what 2 second
Yeah.
maybe fatality, but it's
Yeah.
quick and it's brutal. And sort of that's the thing. They've strayed from that brutality of them viciously killing someone. They didn't like tear their skull out, and then throw it against the wall and then pin it. And then my dogs are excited too. They didn't like pin it to a wall and then, go into this massive close-up detail of the eyeball falling out of the socket. Like, I don't need that in MK, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I want to kill someone, I want it to be quick and brutal in the fashion that depicts that particular character. Not this feature-length film. I understand why they did it. They're trying to up the ante with every MK to, sort of shock value, but I think some
Sure.
people are starting to get a bit fatigued by it.
I agree.
And most other fighting games that are far more successful than Mortal Kombat out there don't even have any gore. They have none of that
Sure. I mean, Street Fighter's a
whatsoever.
good example.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Street Fighter, King of Fighters is coming back in a huge way. There's a lot of talk about KOF. And you take something like Samurai Showdown 2019, where they sort of expanded a little bit on it. So in the original games, you could, depending on if you hit with the heaviest blow with your weapon, you could cut them in half. But they kind of like, sort of like shimmied a bit and fell off and disappeared, right? So in Samurai Showdown 2019, you could do kind of like a killing blow, but it wasn't overly gratuitous, but it felt really satisfying, when you did it. And I think they need to kind of scroll back to that basic concept, and maybe they won't. But if they had a Mortal Kombat, what you're describing, on the other side, going its own direction and going, well, we here get to satisfy that 2D urge. You know,
Yeah.
yes, the new games play in a 2D space, but they like I said, I can't stand the combo system. It feels like people exploit it to a massive degree. You know, the older system felt a lot more fair, a lot more controlled. You know, there were systems in place, and there's a massive. I can't imagine. Like I've seen it for years, and I didn't know it was you, but I have seen those MK HD pics around for years, and every time I see them, I think, what the fuck were they thinking not doing it, right? Like, it looks so good. Do you know what I mean? It looks so good. And you look at like Alex Kidd in Miracle World recently got its, you know, sort of modern take on it. Wonder Boy 3 Dragon's Trap got a modern take on it a while ago, and highly successful because they respected the original and they updated it, and you've done exactly that, right? There is a massive market there. Not every game that Warner Brothers has to make has to be $1 billion seller, right? But I think
that they would prefer if that were the case, of course.
But that's the thing. They'd have that with their new MK game or their new Injustice game or their you know, essentially their Fortnite free-to-play game, you know, which is going to be like a, you know, essentially like they can constantly throw characters in it with multiverses. But you know, they're very excited. But ultimately, you know, having a 2D MK game going down the side of all of that, constantly trickling in money. I mean, you know, I can't imagine anyone out there not supporting it that isn't an MK fan, right? There's a massive contingent of 2D MK fans out there, which is why Mugen is so popular. I know Ed Boon might think of it as like a bastardized version, but the reason why it's so popular, and this is no offense to Ed Boon, is because it's giving MK fans stuff that they've always wanted. You know, I've downloaded versions of Mugen which are very traditional, so it'll be like a trilogy version, but it'll have all the stages, right? It'll, you know, and that's fine. Like, that's okay. But I finally get to have that. Like watch mode. I love watch modes in like CPU versus CPU battles in fighting games. You know, because I when I was younger, me and my friends had all sat around with some hodgepodge Mugen version where we had fucking Homer Simpson versus Pac-Man and, you know, and shit, you know, and we'd sit there and we'd choose our characters and we'd sit back and we go, all right, who's going to win? It was basically a fight night, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I started introducing on this channel, which is Fate Nights, which is, you know, me recording watch mode fights of, you know, characters, you know, on, you know, like there's three fights, best of 3, because I love that experience. I love sort of sitting back and going, oh, I have no idea who's going to win, but I'm going to place my bets. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to go with Scorpion and whatnot. And then of course watch mode, like in emerging games, you can have 2-on-2. Now Street Fighter Alpha 2, was it Alpha 1 or Alpha 2, introduced that boss mode where you could actually play together versus the boss, which is a pretty cool mechanic. And in Mugen, you'd actually have 2-on-2 at the same time, which is fucking crazy. Yeah. You should see the psychoticness of having like Sub-Zero Scorpion versus Ermac Reptile, and they're like literally bouncing characters between each other because one might get hit by a force ball, you know, and then Scorpion might run past that and then like do an uppercut, and it's all awesome. And this is incredible, and people love it. Like it's like it's such a popular part of that, and so that's like one thing I'd ask you is like, could you have a CPU versus CPU mode in your project? Could that be done?
Yeah, absolutely we could. We've spent a lot of time on, right now we're working on a fighting game project, and the project that we worked on after Warner Brothers basically told us no in 2018, we started making our own IP, and in the course of that we developed some AI, and our AI is really you know, whatever, I'm gonna say state of the art. I'm gonna say state of the art because
it's you're the floor. You pimp it out, dude. Right? It's all good.
Yeah, I'm gonna pimp it out pretty hard. But basically, what it is you know, we're using some aspect of machine learning and what we do is we have the AI difficulty becomes more aware of things that a player that has more skill would be aware of. So, a more advanced AI is aware of how much time is left on the clock before the game is going to end. It's aware of where they are on the stage. If they're against the wall, they know that that's not a good place for them and they need to try to escape from the wall. The more advanced AI is going to jump forward to wait for you to try to jump toward them and then jump away and then use a projectile or some way to knock you back from your position, right? When I say projectiles, the game that we're working on now doesn't have projectiles, but the one prior to that did, and we've thought through a lot of these sort of scenarios where the AI really plays like a human being, and there's a percentage chance that when it's not on such a high mode, then there's a sort of a skill tree of scenarios that are presented, like I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that, and there's a confidence level that our AI sort of picks up on, like I've tried this before and I'm confident that it will be successful because my last attempt was successful. So there's a memory there within that match of what worked and what didn't.
That's pretty cool.
Now we could expand upon that and make it so that the AI learns and saves to the hard disk so that it just gets harder and harder for you to fight. But that we haven't done that yet because it could be frustrating, because it gets to the point then where like there's a sort of a line that you can cross where the AI feels like it's just cheating and you just want to like throw your controller to the fucking screen. You know what I mean? Like you're just so angry at this thing right now. And so I feel like what you're saying though, like having the battles between the two different opponents is totally doable, and really it's something that we haven't really done, but we early on when we were working on our AI system, we would make two AI opponents fight against each other, and it is a lot of fun to watch, especially when it gets to the point where you can see the AI learning off of itself for each character about what did and didn't work, and it makes for a very entertaining match that really comes off not like a computer's playing it, but like a human is. And that's one of the things that, we in our most recent game, we had some retailers, play the game to determine whether or not it'd be something that they wanted to carry. And the first thing that they said almost universally is that the AI seems like you're playing against another human opponent because they never got the same experience twice playing multiple matches, because they made different decisions, and based on those decisions, the AI kind of figured out what it was they were going to do, and then either decided to counter it or maybe not counter it. And so it's just we have the AI is advanced enough that could be really fun, and it could be a really fun thing to see. Now, one of the things that we looked at was Killer Instinct had Shadow Mode, where you could basically train up an AI opponent in like a dojo setting and then send it out on your behalf to fight against real players. And that was your Shadow, which I thought was such
awesome.
A cool concept introduced by Iron Galaxy. Those guys are just brilliant when it comes to fighting game design. And no other game has ever done that, but it's such a cool thing, and it's something that we've been wanting to incorporate for a while. And I think we're real close to getting to that level where we've had talks about like, okay, like you could train up the AI and then that's like once it reaches a level where you feel like it's a worthy adversary,
Yep.
you can send it out into the world, and they can like win battles for you on your behalf. Be really fun. But yeah, certainly that would be what you were saying, like having just two local CPU opponents battle it out. I feel like that would be a relatively simple addition to the game, and would be, would add a lot to it for sure.
I think that'd be cool to do online too, wouldn't it? So you'd have like an online
Absolutely.
part where like you go on and you actually play against other people, but then there'd also be like another section, whatever you call it, where they choose their character, you choose your character, and then you sit back and watch them fight online to do that. That'd be cool as well. I know I'm an older fellow, and I take great pride when I beat the shit out of people online in MK11, because I play old school MK when I play online. Even in MK11, right? I'm a scrapper, right? So we didn't have big combos and all of this sort of crap back then. So I scrap, and it's great when you beat someone that's sitting there who's learnt their little 10, 15 hit string, and that's all they fucking do. And then I know it's more punishing than like chipping away and stuff like that, but to me, fighting games is such a psychological experience online. So I love being able to because unfortunately, like a lot of games anyway, they try and find the most broken character, and then within that broken character, what's the best combo, and then they just spam it online. I remember in MK9, the early days, you're fighting like Kung Lao's, Liu Kang's, in the early piece, because they were just so broken, and they did so much damage. And I like the only reason why I use Cabal online when I play, because I can't stand any of the other characters, even Scorpion, right? Like they changed Scorpion's harpoon to an automatic attack, and I'm just like, nah, I'm sorry, like every other character that's got a stun or like an immobilized move like Subby or Cabal's dash, they all get kept, but Scorpion has to, like, his harpoon now instantly, like, he pulls them in and just does a sword slash. I'm like, what the fuck, man? So I would have mained a Scorpion if they kept that, but that change in that one single move was enough for me to go, nah, not using it. But, so I want to be able to use any and all different characters, right? I don't want to feel like, I can only use certain characters because it's the only way I'm going to win online, and it seems like when they strayed into that valley of like, well, you can start your combo even if you're not touching them, that's dangerous. That's why I love the run meter, because it kept things in check. You can't do a combo without it. You have to be touching the person in order to be able to do it. And then they brought in the fucking high-low crap, of like, what do you call it? You can hit high and low in your combos like they do in Tekken. They brought that stuff in as well. And I can't stand that in Mortal Kombat. I know it sounds weird. But like, again, traditional, Yes, if you're standing, block, you can sweep them, sure. But you wouldn't punish them with this massive, like, Godzilla-style combo that just, felt like left them frustrated. So, and I think a lot of people, again, like, I think that's why they love the traditional 2D MK games, because it actually felt more structured. Better gameplay. It felt like you actually, scrapping. So.
There's a simplicity to it that is appealing to a much wider audience of people. And I think that that's why I believe that I fully believe that there's another stream of Mortal Kombat fans who yearn for the good old days, and even the way the mechanics of how those characters play, it's different. And I think it could be. I think that to some degree we need to. I want to be able to convince them that there is that there's this other stream of Mortal Kombat players. I mean, I've tried in the past. I think Ed gets it. Ed, Sean, the folks over at NRS, they understand right away when I say, yeah, there's like the old school players that you're appealing to, and they get it right away. But when you get to like Warner Brothers, they're not. A lot of times you're dealing with folks that may never have even played a Mortal Kombat game, right? Like, and yet they're in the decision making. They're the head decision maker for its fate. And so, yeah, I'm right there with you,
Yeah, like, I mean, I hope it happens. Because it's such a, like I said, I've looked at the screenshots a lot, and it looks incredible. It's exactly how I would imagine, an updated version of MK. It's just
it's great to hear you say that. But I also want, I don't know if you'll edit in some screenshots for your viewers to see later on, but I want to stress this point because while it looks good, it's going to look way, way better when those characters are actually in the game engine, because right now the characters you're seeing are mock-ups that we've used from. Some of the characters were designed a decade ago, and we've taken the 3D file out and just rendered them out in the 3D program and then plopped them on top of the environment, which is all created inside of Unreal Engine 5. But it will make a huge difference when those characters are actually in the environment, matching the lighting of the scene, or have their own character lighting to match the way the original game was. And there's proper self-shadowing and all the things that will make it look a lot more photorealistic, because I've heard people say, well, this looks like a cheap iPhone game or something like that, as like an alternate view. Where I don't always agree with that, but I always try to tell people, like, I've also heard, like, oh, it looks a little too clean. It looks a little cartoony. All of that is going to be mitigated by getting updating the 3D characters so that they fit in the environment. And right now, what you're looking at is mock-ups, and it looks great, but it can look better. So I just want to point that out for those more discerning viewers who are like, well, it doesn't look that good for me. Because there's definitely a version, definitely a pretty large group of people, I won't even say a vocal minority, but a lot of people who say, like, why are you remaking this game? It's perfect the way it is, and it looks soulless with characters that are not real people. And so my response to that is usually like, wait and see how good we can make this look, because this is like 50% of how good it's going to actually look when it's in game. So there's more to look forward to.
I mean, that's the thing, like, it's sort of, it must be hard from a developer, because you're never going to make everyone happy.
Oh, no.
But the thing is, though, that, like, I fully believe your heart's in the right place, and I think that's all that matters. If your heart's in the right place, then I think you can only sort of, go forward with that. Like I said, I was blown away by those screenshots, so imagine seeing that actually, like, in game and moving. And that's the thing, like, because I'm going to have to wrap this up because I've got to run off, but I could talk for hours about this. In fact, I'd love to be able to do more interviews with you, man, because, it's such a great thing to talk about. I love MK in general. But, if you approach them with a free-to-play model, even if you had, like, one stage and 2 characters, to showcase, and I can tell you, like, if that feels and plays like classic MK, even with such a tiny slice of the overall product, I think you'd win people over 100%. Like I said, there's a massive contingent out there that love 2D fighters, and So, and no disrespect here, but this is why things like Mugen and stuff took off in sort of like less, sort of like less rich countries, like things like Brazil and whatnot. And I love those guys; they're fantastic. They're so passionate about Mugen, and they've really pushed it forward. It's because they didn't have either access or they were able to sort of create their own games because maybe they didn't have the money to buy their stuff. I don't know, but ultimately though, because of it, Mugen has proven 1,000% that there are MK fans out there that just love the idea of having these massive rosters with all these stages, custom stages, extra special moves added, things like that. And I think it's just sort of it's sort of convincing. Yeah, it's convincing them to say, listen, there's this massive well, right? You're just thinking, oh, is it going to sell heaps? But like I said, even if you had like 2 characters in a stage that like showcase perfectly how it would play, dude, I think it would just like that'd be enough. And I think that's how they were successful with Killer Instinct. They had fuck all characters and fuck all stages, but they showed us like, look, this is it. This is what we're doing. This is how we can do it. And it proved that they kept, they kept the gameplay and tweaked it to a point that it made it really easy and accessible for new people. Like I'm a retard, right? Like I could never do those combos, right?
Totally.
But I can look like a badass, man. I can look like I get all the pussy when I play Killer Instinct because they've added those systems in there to allow new people that pick up the controller going, oh, this is awesome. I feel really badass when I do it. It's that badass feel. Man, like I said, you've got Fightcade, you've got Mugen projects, and whether Ed Boon thinks they're bastardized versions or not, they're passionate about what Ed Boon's created. They're looking at what he created and going, oh, this is the dream project. If you made this, I'd be happy. I'd pay for it, but that's not happening. So then people create their own, and obviously no one's making money off of it, but people get to see, and get to experience. Oh, I think, like I've modded before. Like I modded an old strategy game, Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth 2, right? I love Lord of the Rings, and I've never really done modding up until that point. And I thought, you know what? I want to have Gandalf and Saruman on the same team, right? I want to be able to build every structure that the bad guys have on my side, and I did it, right? I called it what do I call it? Battle for Middle-earth 2 Arcade Edition.
I love it.
And you can build, like, you can make any hero regardless of faction. I added in like defensive capabilities for the fortresses. So, I can, for like the good guys, you can spawn like all these tornadoes around the castle and like fucking a big army of the dead appear and shit. And the interesting part is that I didn't create any of it, right? I just took what was in the game and I repurposed it, or I moved it, or I created extra. I didn't create any new assets. I even unlocked some assets that were locked away in the code and brought them back. I think there's a Fortress of Dol Guldur that was locked away. I think that wasn't used, and other structures. And I pulled them all out, and I just went crazy. I made fucking ghost ships, right? So I took the sea-based ships, I removed the collision, and made it so that they could go across fucking land, and had them like fading in and out, right?
Awesome.
And because that's what I wanted. Like I wanted to have this, this massive Lord of the Rings experience, but it felt like the gloves were off, right?
Yeah.
I made sure every single character, like the heroes you could choose, have their own special, like every single dial on the Palantir had something you could click on to create, that they could summon their own army, like a mini army, whatnot. It's batshit crazy, dude. Like, I fucking love it, And so when I see Mugen projects, I see that same passion, and I know you got that passion too. I know you do, right? Because as an MK fan, like, just having a massive roster, all the stages, all that sort of stuff is just, that's a dream, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And it's just sort of getting them to sign off on it. But yeah, approach. And so what, man? Like what you said about talking to John Tobias. What a well of fucking information he would have on custom characters and stuff. Like, did you remember the comics? I think it was in the first. Was it the first? The first one. They had that combo character, Yang. It was, what was it? Sin and Sang. They were like two monks, but they would merge together as like this actual combat character. I'm like, how fucking badass is that?
That would be like, that's the kind of stuff that I would love to just sit down with him and pick his brain about. If he's allowed to do that, that would be awesome. It's funny. I've met like Ed and all the people on NetherRealm's side. Really, I can say most of the folks over on the NRS side, but the one person I've yet to actually meet, and it's weird. It's like, he knows of the project. In fact, Tobias was the first one back in 2011 to be like, has anybody seen this? And like, he showed our HD project on, like, I guess the first, whenever Twitter came out, it was like, he was on there and he was showing it. And that was how we got, like, people interested in it back then. And I remember somebody being like, oh my gosh, like, Tobias has seen it. And like, and he put it up there. And yet, I've yet to ever speak with him, connect with him, or anything like that. He's a hard guy to get a hold of, and I'd love the opportunity to meet him now that I've had a chance to meet Ed as many times as I have.
Yeah.
It would be great.
Yeah.
I'd love to pick his brain.
Yeah, I mean that'd be cool. Like shit. Like because I know there's like a lot of MK casts out there. They've had the opportunity to talk to some of the movie people, which is really cool, and I'd love to be able to do that one day. Like I said, I don't have like any sort of script. When I do my videos, actually, I don't have a script. I just talk. I just talk to people. And so I love to be able to talk to them. But John Tobias. Oh, dude, that'd be like talking to God in the MK universe to me, because and I'd say by the sounds of it, the same for you, because like his comic, like because the comics, those MK comics that came out in the 90s, I snapped every one of them up. The artwork, the storytelling in it is incredible. Some of those side ones that they did focused on Kung Lao, Katana Molina, Goro. I mean, the Goro one, holy shit. That was awesome. Even the Kano series I thought was really good. They were just incredible. And then they had those, I think, the two big versions. The tournament, was it Tournament 1, Battle Tournament 1 or 2 or whatever. The nice big thick ones with like, it was incredible. It was like all my Christmas came at once for the MK comics. It was amazing. And I just think to myself, it's like, they introduced characters in then, like Hydro. Right?
Yeah.
Which Hydro has shown up in, he's shown up in Mugen projects,
For sure.
Even dumbass characters like Hornbuckle and fucking. I remember, I think it was EGM where they had Pedro, where it was like a Spanish version of Striker. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Right? They've made him in Mugen games. Like, it's crazy, man.
I because we're talking about Tobias, I just have one thing, because I have to actually wrap it up too. I gotta get to sleep here. It's actually late over here in the U.S. But the one thing that was really cool, I don't know if you follow Tobias over on Twitter.
Yeah.
But if you do, he tells stories about old Mortal Kombat stuff.
Yep.
And I think I mentioned it earlier, but I don't know if it's something that a lot of people know. But there's a character that's like dead in the background. That's like in the trees, I believe, that Raiden-esque looking character that's in the Living Forest.
Yep.
Has a name, and it's Alma. I think I'm gonna say it wrong, but that's what is being said when you knock the person into the dead pool, and the skeleton pops up after the acid like gets their body.
Yep.
It's not what I thought it was foul ball.
Oh,
I thought
yeah.
that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
But it apparently, according to Tobias, there's a whole character in the story called Alma, and that's what he's saying, Alma, which
Oh, shit.
it just boggles the mind. It's like one of those things that just like you would never know unless you followed like Tobias on Twitter. So I've been trying to find that tweet for a while now. It was pretty recently. It was like early this year. He like went into the whole background behind that because somebody was like, asked him a question like, is there a story with the guy with the raven hat in the background of the living forest? Like, what's his story? Is he like a farmer or like what's the deal? And he gave like he's like, oh yeah, this entire story. And he went into the whole thing, and and then he explained that, then people were like, oh, so is that what is being said when you knock a person in the dead pool? And he's like, yep. It's not, I just thought this whole time it was foul ball, like the foul ball, like what you'd say in baseball, but
yeah,
I don't know.
That's really cool.
Yeah, well, it's like one of so many tidbits of knowledge that like you'd probably, if you were able to get into an interview situation with him, you just want to ask him like one question after another, like, well, tell me about this, tell me about that. But yeah, it'd be great.
Well, listen, man, I can't thank you enough for doing this.
My pleasure, man.
I was when I got your email reply, I was anxious. No, because like I've only just sort of started, because I've got a few different YouTube channels that I run, and so I've sort of been reaching out and trying to, depending on the theme and interview people. So this is actually my first developer interview.
Oh,
actually,
awesome.
Right? So that's pretty cool. Even my dogs are happy. Yeah, I know you're happy. Right. But I'll leave it there. But yeah, thanks so much again. Now listen, for everyone that's listening to this, I will post all the other links that I had in the previous video regarding this below this one. Did you want me to share your Twitter as well?
Yeah, sure. It's at Galactate, and if you don't mind putting that on there, that'd be great.
Yep.
So that I can
that'd be cool.
Start to build my following base up there on Twitter.
Now you can pimp me out the fuck you like, as far as I'm concerned. If you want, like I said, I know I'm only small. I know there's a lot of bigger guys out there, like say Maximilian Uncaged Games and guys like that, who would do wonders for being able to talk to you and spread the word, because they've just got a huge following. But if I can help in any way I can, man, I don't want anything. I don't give a shit, right? I just it happening would be just awesome. So if I can help, or if there's anything you want to showcase or anything like that, just let me know. If you feel you want me to, because it's so good. It's rare actually, but it's so good to talk to other like-minded classic MK fans. That feel the same way, they think the same way, they have these dreams and ideas and stuff like that, and know that with the right execution, like you guys are doing, can make it happen. And it's cool to talk to someone who actually is in a position to hopefully have this go forward. So
awesome. Yeah, it's been a pleasure being here, and thanks for having me. And I hope that it happens. And if it doesn't, one thing somebody said to me was like, well, what if they're working on their own? And I said, you know what, I'd be totally fine with that.
Yeah.
Because I know that this project was dead in the water until I came to them and basically said it needs to happen. And I'm just going to keep pushing until either our team gets to do it or NetherRealm decides to do it themselves, or they pay somebody that they believe in to do it, because I think it needs to happen. I think it's really a matter of when, not if.
Yeah.
At least as long as I'm still breathing, right?
Yeah. So. Absolutely. All right, man. Well, thanks again. I appreciate that. I'll just round it out, and then I'll just have a quick chat before we go, just so I can close the stream. But yeah, thanks again. Joe, I can't say Joseph, can I? Get in trouble.
No, you'd be in trouble.
No.
Joe.
But no, thanks again, man. I appreciate you coming on. It was awesome. And
Thanks for having me.
I'll catch you guys next time. And hopefully, if you want, dude, we can come back and chat some more.
Absolutely.
Because I think it'd be pretty cool if that, if you're in for that. So yeah.
For sure.
All right, guys. I'll catch you later. And again, thanks, Joe. And I'll guys see you on the next video here, right on Fate. Catch ya.